Don't stop.
Hi, thanks so much for joining me on the Everything and Anything in a Big Gay podcast. I am Zach Randles-Friedman, your host, and today I wanted to talk about a recent family get-together that I had, and it's all going to roll up to something, so stick with me for a second. But I had this family event, multiple-day family event, and it was so amazing to see this part of my family, and we haven't seen some of them in a couple of years, just because they live in a different, state, and I don't know, people get busy and they have kids, and we travel and we move and travel some more, and just, it's the same old, like everybody gets busy and it's like, where did time go? But we had an amazing time with them. We had a awesome dinner at our cousin's house, and how many of us were there? I don't know, over 20 of us, I guess, were there for dinner. And it was so fun to catch up. And so, again, it's been a couple of years since we've seen almost all of them. And my podcast got brought up in conversation about, some of them most of everybody there listened to it. But there was a couple people that were there. They're not direct family, but they're like, I don't know them that well. So they're like, tell me about the podcast. And so I was trying to talk about the podcast, like what Everything and Anything in a Bit Gay it is. And I don't think I really have a good elevator speech for it, because I think I always think about maybe my last couple of episodes that I did. And I always say the same thing. I always say, I have a lot of psychics and mediums on there. I have people that are in cults. I have people that had near-death experiences. I have a woman that survived a 17-year marriage whenever she found out her husband cheated on her with a man, and now she has a transgender daughter. I have a transgender woman that was 66 years old and decided to, transition into a woman at that age. But, and you're like, they're like, okay, well, is there a theme? And then, I thought about that. I'm like, no, there's really not a theme. The theme is everything and anything, and it's everything and anything that I want to talk about. And it could be I do get stuck in these trends where I really get into like psychics and mediums, and I want to like interview them. And I feel like they all contact me at the same time, or I reach out to them. And so I end up having very similar guests all the time, or through a space of time. But yeah, I don't really have that elevator speech, and then I need to work on it. But it's really the things that I want to talk about on this show. And my friend, who's my editor, who edits my episodes and stuff, he said, the people that you found on TikTok are really great guests. And so, I don't know, I probably found a dozen people from TikTok over the last couple of years. And the reason why they're such good guests is because it's somebody that I reached out to, that I was interested in and wanted to interview them. And not that there's a lot of guests that come to me and want to be interviewed, and they're interesting too. But I don't know, and there's also been guests though that I have not been so interested in interviewing, and then they turned out to be like an amazing interview, and they were so interesting. But kind of building up to it, I do research on everybody that I interview, and I'm just like, oh, yeah, okay. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about, but we'll think of something. And then they're like amazing. And then there has been only 2 out of the, 175 interviews I've done on this show so far. There's only been 3 people out of over 175 people that did not make it to be published for one reason or another. And I'm not going to get into who they are or why, but it didn't happen. And our morals and what we value were not aligned, and it's my show, and I chose not to air them for that reason, because who I think my listeners are, the LGBTQ plus community and allies, I don't think wanted to hear what these three particular people we're talking about. And so I didn't air them. And it took me a while to get past not airing somebody or putting them out there, but I don't want to promote them. And the interview just didn't feel right to me. And that's what it happens sometimes. So, I think it's so important though to have, whenever you're talking to somebody, that what they're talking about is the truth and it's who they are. And this is where I'm going to roll this into my guest today, because my guest today's name is Jake Hylton, and he is part of this independent news organization, is what I guess I'll call it. It's called Lookout. It was called Lookout Phoenix, and they've expanded past Phoenix now, and they're going into Colorado, and they're going. They want to do the whole Southwest, New Mexico, and what I really liked about, I think I was scrolling through Instagram, and Lookout is the name of it's lookoutnews.org, by the way, and it will be in the description of this video or podcast. But it was about LGBTQ plus news, what was happening kind of in the Phoenix area. I'm like, oh, well, let me check this out. And I went to their website, and, it's more localized, but what I really loved about it, it's a news outlet that they're dedicated to kind of making sure that the stories they're saying are all accurate stories. And I so appreciate that. They're not putting out fake news. They're not making you through a bunch of social clips to try to piece a story together, and that some may be, correct or not totally correct, or it's clickbait. Like, none of that is happening here. And they're a really awesome organization. I love talking with Jake. I love what him and his team are doing for the news in the Southwest or the west of the country. I think they'll probably eventually one day be a national news organization. They're doing well. Their stories are interesting. They really get down into the details, and they fact-checked everything. So enjoy my interview today with Jake Hylton, and leave a comment and let me know what you think about. And be sure to go to their website and follow them, sign up for their news releases that they send over email. And they're an amazing group. So thanks for listening. Hi, thanks for joining me on the Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay podcast. Today I have a new guest that you have not heard from before. Today I'm joined by Jake, one of the people behind lookoutphx.org, which is an independent local journalism project focused on accountability, community voices, and stories in Phoenix that often get ignored or buried. Lookout PHX or Phoenix isn't just reporting the news, it's asking who's getting protected, who gets harmed, and who gets left out of the conversation. Jake, I'm really glad to have you here, and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Zach. Happy to be here.
Was that a good description, first of all? Because I kind of pulled it from what I seen on your website, and if there's any...
So we actually started as I think it was a great description, but we started off as Lookout Phoenix, but we actually ended up rebranding and changing that name and that domain. So we're actually lookoutnews.org. So when we started, we were just covering queer communities in Phoenix, and that was about 3 years ago. But then through a series of very fortunate events, we have expanded across the entire state. So now we cover queer communities across the state of Arizona right now. And we do exactly what you said. So the accountability-driven news, as well as sort of service journalism and representing those voices that don't get the chance to be heard.
That's awesome. And do you think that you will even leave the state of Arizona at some point and start doing more outside?
Funny you say. We have been working for just over the last year. It's been about 13 and a half months now. We've been doing a lot of work and a lot of research and data gathering on a lot of different other states, primarily the ones in the Southwest. So Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Nevada. And next year, we are looking at rolling out into Colorado as our first expansion.
So when was the moment? So are you one of the founders behind this?
Yeah. So my partner, Joseph, partner, but also partner in business. Yeah. He is the editor-in-chief, and he is a well-seasoned journalist. about 15 plus years, primarily doing a lot of investigative reporting and police, prisons, criminal justice, things like that. And so he came up with the idea, and it started as this Substack. Like I said, it was just doing once a month covering Phoenix queer communities on Substack. And then I was just sort of helping out with the business side and giving him some help and pointers. And then I was brought on about 6 months later as the official executive director. So I am the founding executive director. Yeah.
So at what point what's your partner's name?
Joseph.
So I don't call him partner the whole time. So at what point did Joseph kind of say, there's all this injustice happening, there's all these things happening, there's all this news happening, and we should report it. We should do something about it. What was happening in the world, or what made him want to do this?
Yeah. So at the time, Joseph was working at the Arizona Republic, which is the largest legacy newspaper here in Arizona.
Okay.
And he saw that there wasn't very nuanced coverage of queer communities, right? That the only time that queer communities were really mentioned were in pride parades or during drag shows or whatever Carrie Lake had been mentioning at the time. And it always sort of got pushed off. It was always like, oh, that's not super important right now. Oh, that's not okay. Or, oh, we don't really have time for that. We don't have the resources. Oh, we'll just put an intern on it. And at the time, there was also some less than desirable things being published by the Republic in their op-eds about LGBTQ plus communities, specifically the trans community. And it was, at one point, there was more coverage and more being written in the op-eds about pronouns than there was coverage of the pronoun bills in the legislature.
Oh, okay.
And so Joseph said, well, somebody's got to do something about this. Yeah. So he mentioned something on Twitter at the time when it still was called that, and it got a really big response. And then a couple weeks later, he talked about it a little bit more, and then he published just like a really, basic newsletter, and it kind of took off. And then within about 5 months, we ended up receiving a $400,000 seed funding grant.
Wow. Did you? And that's amazing. Were you shocked?
Yeah. Oh, completely. Right. I mean, we are really, the only accountability driven newsroom, nonprofit newsroom covering queer communities. There are other nonprofit newsrooms in the nation covering queer communities, but for us, accountability and that really heavy focus on those in power that's really what we try to focus on. And so for us, it was a complete and total shock, right? I mean, we are a queer nonprofit newsroom in Arizona.
Yeah.
The reality of us ever existing was slim to none. And the likelihood that we would succeed was maybe 1 in 1,000, 1 in a million. And now 3 years later, December 22nd, is our 3rd birthday, and now we're still kicking and we're looking at growing. We've expanded across the state from just Phoenix, and now we're looking at going into Colorado.
I try not to get political on this particular podcast of mine, but it's almost impossible not to in some cases, especially with a story like yours. But because I do a news podcast as well called Listen Up Girls, so I kind of do 10 minutes of LGBTQ plus news, and so I know what the administration that we have in the White House today gives us so much news to put out there nationwide. So for the LGBTQ plus community. So I have to, and Arizona comes up often in my news because of all the things that happen there. So whenever you started this, did you expect to get this type of reaction?
No. We actually knew from the very beginning. Joseph and I had some big conversations, and we said, listen, it doesn't matter what we do. We need to be better than the rest.
Yeah.
Right. We have to set the bar higher because that's the only way that we'll be allowed in the door. Right. Not a seat at the table, but in the door.
Yeah.
And from there, we also have been very, very, very clear that failure was a potential outcome at
Yeah.
any given time. And it doesn't mean that it was wrong. It doesn't mean that it was bad. It just means that the cards were stacked against us, right? Circumstantially, we knew that failure would probably be the most likely of outcomes. And so we've been doing everything we can to date to ensure that that really doesn't happen.
And we'll be right back. Okay, now back to the show. When you're deciding kind of what to cover, what values are you looking at? Like what's guiding those choices?
Yeah, sure. So for just like little quick disclaimer. So I am not a journalist and I don't do any of the journalism side. The way that our organization's built out is that we have a big firewall between operations / business and the editorial. So editorial functions fully independently. So it doesn't matter who our donors are. It doesn't matter what relationships we have. The news is the news and it's independent. But that being said, the things that we do cover, like I said, is I would say that the highest level is that accountability, right? So holding those in power to account. And then also on that other side, that service journalism side, right? So trying to find people who are doing good and trying to make positive, impactful change and telling those stories. And then under that, we cover 5 to 6-ish beats. So it always falls within the realm of politics, health, education, safety, business, and culture. But when we say culture, we don't necessarily mean like drag shows or a pride parade, right? I mean, it's a lot more nuanced than that. It is really about like the culture of LGBTQ plus communities, right? Arts and entertainment reporting is, I think it has a place and it's very important.
Yeah.
But for the last 20 plus years or so, queer communities in the media have been relegated to entertainment, arts and culture, lifestyle, right? And so it's done this thing where we've always sort of just been seen as dudes in leather harnesses or pink feather boas.
Yeah.
And so for us, it really is going in and diving deeper. It is getting the stories in politics that have to do with extremism or that have to do with the bills that are seemingly fine that will negatively impact the LGBTQ plus community, or reporting on school boards and how that affects trans, queer, non-binary kids in schools. And then things like gender affirming care or conversion therapy on the health side. And, you know, I mean, we just published a couple of pieces about HIV in prisons and detention centers, right? So the work that we do isn't just for queer people only, right? But it is through a queer lens.
Yeah.
And it is for those that believe in that pro-equality, that human rights sort of channel. So the work that we do is eligible to be read by anyone. It just comes from a perspective that has really never been heard from, except for, you know, I mean, way back when we're talking about, you know, sort of the Village Voice and Christopher Street magazine, or, you know, the Christopher Street zines and things like that, when it was really, really underground. But here for us, it's about taking these stories and bringing them up to a level that puts them, to use journalism terms, above the fold. These are the types of stories that are just as important. And they are reported on by folks who have a queer lived experience, who understand some queer culture, right?
Yeah.
So that's how we sort of decide. And when it comes to, for a good chunk of the stories, I mean, I think the last time I checked a few months ago, it was probably right about 90% of the stories we didn't actually come up with, right? It wasn't like we were sitting in a room that said like, all right, what should we do? Pitch stories, pitch story, pitch story, pitch story. You know, some of them are like, hey, I heard about this. There was this great idea. But most of the stories that we've reported on have been brought to us by our community. They have told us that that is what is important. So the work that we do is immediately reflective of the community that we serve, because we don't believe it's our job to tell our community what's important. We believe it is important to give them the information about what they believe is important. We report on what they want to hear.
That's amazing. I mean, I love that. That the community is actually kind of involved and giving you. And whenever you do these stories, do you ever get a moment, or do you ever get like feedback where you're like, you've gotten so much feedback, you're like, wow, what you did made a huge difference?
Absolutely. And quite a bit actually, and that's why we do what we do. I mean, we are a community centric newsroom, and the term that I've been using is like, we're an identity based newsroom, right? Yeah. And we're not just general publication. We are an identity based newsroom, which means that we are serving, you can call it a niche audience, but the reality is that we are reporting on the things that affect how queer people move through the world. And so, one of the very first stories that we did was about, it popped up on TikTok. It was a queer realtor who was living out in Queen Creek. And for reference, Queen Creek is it's about 45 minutes outside of Phoenix. And it used to be a little bit more rural, but it's become a lot more developed now, but it's still very traditional and conservative in its values. Okay. And this gay realtor and his husband, they put out a pride flag, and that pride flag got torn down. They had their house vandalized. They had their cars attacked. And the only thing that we had found about it was a local radio station that plays rock and roll reported on it, gave like a small little clip, and the DJ just said like, come on, guys, like, you're in Queen Creek. What did you expect was going to happen? Right? Like, you go to Queen Creek, that's what's going to happen. And then we did reporting on it, and our reporting encouraged the mayor to investigate it as a hate crime.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the city council got involved, and the neighborhood got involved. And that was, I think, one of the first or second stories that we did. And from there, we knew the power of the work that we were doing, because nobody else cared. Yeah. Nobody else thought it was important, but we did. And when we did, it made a huge difference, right? Another instance that I can think of is we had a public health fellow investigate conversion therapists. So a couple years ago, our governor did an executive order that made conversion therapy illegal in the state of Arizona. And what our reporter found out was that essentially conversion therapists had just rebranded it. They called it something different so they could get away with it. And they dove in and they did a lot of really great research. And we knew, before it ever published, we knew that we had done a great job and that we were going to do a great job because we got a cease and desist letter from their lawyer. And
that's when you know you did the right. That's when you know you got their attention.
Exactly. Yeah. And then when we published, we had handfuls of people coming out saying, this happened to me. I didn't think anyone would ever care. I didn't think people would know about it. I didn't think that they would be held accountable. Thank you for doing what you did. Right. So the work that we have done, it regularly is immersed in what the community needs and what they tell us they need and what they want. So for us, it really is about those impacts and those outcomes.
And being in such a conservative state where you're at, do you ever worry about, you and your partners, even, do you ever feel uncomfortable about this or feel, about your safety or anything, just because, people are crazy?
Yeah. All the time.
Oh,
all the time. 100% all the time. I wish I could say that I was a fearless warrior and that none of this was scary. Every single day is scary.
Really?
And yeah, it is. I mean, like I grew up here. I've lived here all my life. And for reference, my partner, Joseph, is an Iranian gay man, right? He is Persian, Middle Eastern, looks Middle Eastern. And he gets hate from not only being queer, but also for being Middle Eastern.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily the safest or the greatest place for us to be. But we also understand that's also why we're needed. And so it's not this hero complex and it's not martyrdom. We don't do things and, put ourselves in immediate danger for, just for gits and shiggles. But yeah, it is scary. And we have regular conversations about what we can do to initiate safety and how we can protect things, how we can protect ourselves and our reporters and our community. We do a lot of community events, and a big chunk of that is when we do these events, how do we keep them safe because they're in public spaces?
Yeah.
So
So I live in Massachusetts, and I'm right almost in Boston now, but I lived in the suburbs prior, and there was a lesbian couple that had a pride flag out on their house. And as you know, Massachusetts is super liberal and open to, and there's a million and gay people that live in Massachusetts. But this lesbian couple in the suburbs had a pride flag outside of their house, and somebody ripped it down, and they ended up finding out who it was. I don't know if through a Ring camera or what the story was, because this was so many years ago, but it ended up being like one of the neighbors' kids or something. And so what happened is that everybody in that street, to kind of make them feel comfortable again, ended up getting a pride flag and putting it on their house. And
yeah,
then it spread from that street, and the whole town ended up like having pride flags. So it's just like things like that like matter so much, and I think it just reminds me of what you're doing and reporting. And, I hope things like that happen from the things that you end up putting out there. So
yeah, I think that one of the big things is that there's such a lack of representation in the media, and even when it is, like I said, it's more lifestyle or entertainment, or it's a drag show or whatever harm is happening. And the through line of everything that we have found in the last 3 years is that people need community, right? Like
yeah,
we feel like we're all alone, and people say like, "Oh, that's a one-off. That's not an issue. Oh, that doesn't happen." And the only reason why they believe that is because they never hear about it, because no one else believes that it's important enough to be reported. And
yeah,
so for us, we get the opportunity to elevate those stories and to start drawing those through lines that say like, this isn't a one-off situation. This is a pattern.
yeah,
This is creating uncertainty in our community's safety. Like this needs to be addressed.
yep. So you're a nonprofit, and you really kind of depend on people helping and donating, correct? Is that yeah?
Absolutely.
So before the show started, I went on and did a small donation, and then so I'm asking kind of everybody else how, because I know I understand how important this is, and especially you guys are not just kind of putting out those big national stories. You're at the community level. When you're talking about a realtor and his partner's house being, or a car being vandalized and the pride flag being taken down, that's amazing, and that's a lot of work. So if
Mhm.
someone is looking to do a donation or anything like that, lookoutnews.org is where you can go, and you can actually donate to help Jake and Joseph and their organization just kind of keep going. And I think what you're doing is fantastic. Do you ever kind
Thank
of
you.
stop and look back? It's been 3 years, but the two of you ever kind of stop and say, wow, like we're making a difference, or we're protecting our community? And even though you said, it's not always safe feeling, or it could be uncomfortable, but like if it wasn't for people like you, then nobody would know about this.
Yeah, I mean, and we do. Hey, thank you so much. I mean, I really appreciate the kind words. And I mean, one thing that we do, and we've done it since our very first year. So we, like I said, we do a lot of events, but our signature event every year is called Outwatch. And Outwatch has always been about celebrating our community's resilience,
Yeah.
right? It is throughout the year bringing folks together and having pieces of this that are enriching, that like people leave personally fulfilled, and also things that are informative. But also at the end of the day, Outwatch is and always will be a queer dance party, period. Right?
Mhm.
Like, which is feels possibly atypical as a nonprofit, right? But
Yeah.
our biggest fundraiser, we don't do galas, we don't do plated dinners. Our
Yeah.
biggest party, our biggest fundraiser of the year is a queer dance party. And the reason for that is it gives us the opportunity to bring the community that we have been building over the year and through the years together, to be in a space where we can sweat it out, where we can say, listen, uh, also, is this can I curse?
Yes. Say
Okay,
fuck
like this
whatever
has
you
been a
want.
hard fucking year, right?
Yeah.
This has been a hard fucking year, and I need to just release, right?
Yeah.
So it gives us that opportunity where people can come together and sweat it out and dance and say, fuck it all. And to be doing that with those who are living similar lives so
Mm-hmm.
that they feel that sense of community and that rush. You know, I mean, we did a 3-day Outwatch Fest this year, and the second day, so the first day we did a really big town hall year in review, and the second day we did a night in the park, and the third day was the big dance party. And so the second day with that night in the park, we held a giant queer kickball game. We had a bunch of like yard activities. There was like cornhole and a giant Jenga. There was just like a bunch of games and stuff, and we had community organizations there that like that were ways that people could get involved and more included in their community. And then we fed the entire attendance. It was like over 100 plus people. We fed them all a free dinner and then did a movie screening in the park.
Awesome.
And it was a logistical nightmare, and I was exhausted. But by the time we got to everybody getting dinner and sitting down for the movie, I went to go grab myself a plate, and I stopped there and I looked up, and I saw over 100 people sitting at these tables talking, and none of them knew each other. And I got the chance to just be like, we made this a safe space. We made this happen for people. And that was, I think, enough to carry me through the next 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
It just like, you don't do it for that, like, oh, I want to make sure that I'm fulfilled, but I'm a part of this community.
Yeah.
And I realized that I had never had something like what we did. And that gave, like, as a member of the community, I felt fulfilled. And as the executive director of this organization, I felt honored to be able to do it because we had this chance to make something that everybody else in most other communities get.
Yeah.
And we did it, and it felt normal, right? We felt normal.
Yeah.
And it was awesome.
What's the LGBTQ plus community like in Arizona?
Ooh, well, we have the 14th largest LGBTQ plus community per capita in the nation.
Okay.
We have the 4th largest trans population per capita in the nation. And the LGBTQ plus community here in Arizona is siloed. We have the L and the G and the B and the T and the Q.
Why is that?
I think Southwest culture is a weird thing. It's sort of a live and let live. It is based in some puritanical sort of like ideals. And so there's, not that there's anything wrong with this, but like there are a lot of like what we would call like the suburban gays, right? And a lot of people really want that. I want that white picket fence. I want to go, like have that American dream style life. And here, that sort of is really prevalent, especially amongst gay men. And for some reason, the gay men in Arizona that have created this, eons old sort of like nemesis ship with the lesbians and queer folk, and those who are non-binary or gender non-conforming, and those who are bisexuals feel like they don't really have a place to go even when they're there. And then a lot of the trans community, it intentionally, I believe, like pulls themselves out, and they have their own, and they are a lot more siloed. And I think that that's for safety, right? And I think that a lot of what we do is really based in safety and trying to keep ourselves safe. And so a lot of what Lookout wants to do, especially with the work we do in our journalism and in the events, is to help build some bridges, right? How do we build bridges, and how do we have hard conversations, and how do we bring people together? We can still be siloed for safety, but also we need channels to be able to come together and commingle, because the only way we'll get through the hell that we are currently living in is together, we believe.
Whenever you had that event and you were looking at the 100 people having dinner, what was it, a mix of all those communities though?
It was.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, the thing that Joseph and I also said from the beginning, we had a lot of things that we talked about at the beginning that we sort of put in at rules, is that we've realized that gay men, specifically cis gay men, have always had the stage when it comes to LGBTQ plus reporting, right? And there is so much of this community and how far we have come as queer people that did not come from gay men, right? I mean, during the AIDS crisis, it was the lesbian community who came through and took care of those who were afflicted. Mm-hmm. When we were fighting, the very first Pride Parade was initiated by BIPOC trans women. Mm-hmm. And we as cis gay men, right, have had the luxury of benefiting from that. And so for us, we decided that, well, of course, we would still report on that sector of the community. It's still important, but we would make it very intentional that the stories of those who were not just cis gay men were also told. So it feels really great that a majority of the stories we have done are on lesbians and the transgender community, right? Like, we have been able to cover those stories in a very nuanced way. And then queer and BIPOC individuals, and then gay men. Mm-hmm. So for us, our events that we hold, they prove to us that the things that we're doing are working, because we have a diverse bit, right? We can't say like, well, that's all gay men again.
Yeah.
And to be perfectly honest, it's actually kind of weird, because a large part of our audience isn't gay men, right? The largest part isn't gay men, because I actually don't know why. I think that it's really fascinating that there's a lot of gay men, especially when we do our events. It's not the demographic that is the most attended. And I think it's because we don't, we might be a little too serious.
And we'll be right back. Okay, and now back to the show. Well, I get it, because my news that I do, my news podcast, is not gay men, is not the main, which I thought it would have been. It's actually women, and I don't know if it's lesbians or not. I'm assuming it is, because it's an LGBTQ plus news show, but it's women. So it could be transgender women or lesbians, and because I do a lot of transgender news, obviously, with what's happening in today's world. So so it's the same thing with me. It just, I don't know, maybe they're just, gay men are off doing their own thing and don't care about the news. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, but I mean, it feels really great that we're able to uplift those stories in those parts of the community. It feels like we're meeting the moment that we decided we needed to meet back 3 years ago, right?
Yeah. Does it kind of scare you a little bit, to not because of what's happening in those states, but there's so much to cover, especially in Colorado's in the news all the time, right? So, or in the LGBTQ plus news, and to kind of expand. And I mean, I think you're going to go nationwide, just because I think what you're doing is so fantastic. So I could see it happening,
it's
quicker.
The goal.
And I think it would happen quicker than you think, just because, and I know there's resources and money and all that needs to happen in order to make something that big. But I mean, you started in Phoenix, then you took Arizona, now you're going to Colorado and talking about New Mexico and stuff. I mean, it's gonna happen. Does that make you, like, I don't know if I want to say scared or uncomfortable, but does it make you, how does it make you feel?
Kind of like my stomach's gonna fall out of my butt. Right? Like, which is also one of my favorite Mean Girls quotes, and it is the lesser known of them, but it is one of my favorite Mean Girl quotes. But I think maybe because it feels the most like the most apt description at most times. It does, like, it's, but I think the reason for that is that I still feel 16.
Yeah.
Right. I still feel like a kid, and it's like, oh, I can't do this. I'm just like a little baby. I want to play with like blocks. Like, I don't know what's going on. But I think there is something extremely invigorating about it. Like it's very exciting because we are the only nonprofit queer newsroom this side of Ohio, right? The other ones are east of Ohio. So like for us, these are communities that have never had this coverage. These are communities that have never been given the opportunity to share their stories.
Yeah.
And the best part about it is that the 5 states in our Southwest region that we're looking to cover, there's a lot of rural coverage that needs to be done. And those rural communities have queer people in them. And I think that is something that everybody forgets, is like, whether you want to believe it or not, like there are queer people everywhere. And that means in the small town of 48 people or in the big city of 7 million. It doesn't matter. Everywhere in between, there are queer people. And whether they have come out or not, we want to make sure that we give folks the opportunity to have their stories told and to have that be top of mind for everyone. So that my hope, my goal eventually is that, I know it takes time, but the hope is that it can change hearts and minds. You know, I mean, we partner a lot. Our entire organization is really built on collaborations and partnerships. And so we do a wire service. So anything we publish, other news outlets can publish for free as long as they follow the criteria and, you know, give us the credit, the byline, and they, you know, link back to our website. But my hope is that we will start becoming conspicuous enough in, you know, publications that those in rural communities start to read. And maybe that very conservative person that you thought, oh God, I can't tell them I'm gay because what will happen to me, reads a story and says, you know what? I may not agree with their lifestyle, but that shouldn't happen to anybody.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
And that is a damn good first step, in my opinion. It's not where I believe everyone should be, but I do think that if people can read a story and say, that's awful, I don't care who you are, it shouldn't be that way, that puts us so much further ahead.
Yeah.
Right? So
I'm hoping the world turns that way soon, you know,
well, I
or
mean,
the United States. I mean, just, yeah, I don't know. I have hope, but I think there's a lot of change. I feel like again, I'm not trying to get political, but you know, when Obama and even Biden was in office, I feel like we were taking so many steps forward, and now we've taken all those steps back and even gone back before. It's insane where it's happening in this country.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, and I think a big part of that too, right, is that I think it's that we got complacent. I think we got complacent once Obergefell happened and we got gay marriage. I think that everyone said, like, that's the end of the fight. Let's go.
Yep.
But the fight had sort of just started. And I think that complacency put us in a perfect position to end up where we are right now, right? Because we didn't continue to push for actual equity and equality. We pushed for one thing, which I think was a great thing to push for, right?
Yeah.
But I think that then there was so much momentum that we just sort of, you know, kept burning the lamps all night instead of using that fuel for something else.
Yeah. Well, I think what's happening now is making people want to start fighting again. Like you can see it happening again. You can see people are mad again, like it was before same-sex marriage was legal. And you hear people talking and wanting to get more involved with things. And that's why whenever I see, you know, organizations like yours doing these type of stuff, that's why I want to highlight it, because we need everyone to know about it and to want to. You're getting this news out that other organizations aren't. So that's why it's so important for our community. So
yeah, well, thank you. You know, I mean, it's for us, it really is. It's about, you know, I mean, a lot of people will label us as like, oh, you're a progressive news outlet, and the reality is that, like, we're not. We take a very fact-based approach to everything we do, and just because the rest of the country has labeled LGBTQ plus rights as progressive, then we're now seen as progressive, right? And other people will say like, "Oh, you're doing activism," and it's like we're actually not. We're not advocating for any one thing. We are just telling the truth through a queer lens. And what we believe is that we have the power to not be activists, but to be activators, right? We have the ability to give folks the information they need to flip the switch and say, I can go now. I know what to do. I have all the information I need. And I got it from a source that I trust because I know that they're not trying to point me in one direction or another, right? And so, on the flip side, that also gets us into trouble sometimes. And by trouble, I mean, we get flack from our own community. There are folks who sometimes do not like the work that we do because we believe that we should not only keep those accountable outside of our community, but inside too. And that means ourselves. That means like we tell our community regularly, like, hold us accountable. If we do something, if we say something wrong, we're still human, but we need to be told that. And we don't see accountability journalism as an opportunity to nail someone to a cross. We see accountability journalism as an opportunity that we give people. You hid this for a reason. You didn't want people to know about this for a reason. And now they do. So we're giving you an opportunity to do right and do better. And if you do right and you do better, cool, awesome, no harm, no foul, right? Like, sucks that that's how it was. That's what you did. But now let's move forward together, right? We as a community cannot tell people that they should clean their house when ours is not yet in order. Right? We need to fix our shit so that we are squeaky clean, so that when people come over and try and white glove test us and say like, oh, well, this is messy, oh, that's dirty, we say, can't fucking find it, can you? No, it's because we figured our shit out. And that, when we can figure our shit out, that means that we will be in a place to move forward collectively. And I think that is when we will have the hope and the compassion and the power to be able to make real lasting change for our community.
Well, what I think you're doing is amazing. And I'm so happy I got a chance to talk with you and getting the word out about. So it's lookoutnews.org is the website. And I will put the link of your website in the description of the podcast or the video for whoever's looking, and get people to kind of come on and see what you're doing.
I love that. I appreciate it.
And go and do a donation and support. This is the things that our communities needs to be supporting and doing. I'll just kind of tell you about. I did another interview with a guy. His name was Jake too. Actually, he is looking to build a. He's been doing it for 3.5 years, and they're going to open up a location in Boston. But they're doing it's called QT Library, and it's called Queer Trans Library, where they're looking to create a space in Boston for people that are a queer trans community to kind of come together. They'll have 5,000 books, and it's just a place, and it's not just a library, but it will be a place where people can come and play chess together or knit or just go on Wi-Fi, and it's just a place to bring the community together. It's not a community center, but it's different than that. So, and I just love that. That's why I love what you're doing. I love what the other Jake is doing, and it just feels like people are coming together to help others, and that's what I love to do, is to tell those stories.
And I really appreciate you wanting to tell those stories and giving a space so that the organizations and the people doing this type of work get a little bit more reach, right? I mean, it's because of people like you that we're able to keep going. So thank you, Zach. It means a lot.
Yeah. Again, go to lookoutnews.org and check out the amazing stories. I think if you need to make sure you have a little time, because there's so many great stories that they have on there to kind of go through them, and do a donation. I mean, take a little bit of money and give it to them so they can kind of continue on doing this great work. So thank you so much, Jake, and tell Joseph thank you for doing this as well. It was great having you on.
Thanks so much, Zach.
And if this episode resonates with you, please share it with someone, and also leave a comment on the episode, and check out the website again. Again, it's lookoutnews.org. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening.